Well, good morning again, everyone. An empty tomb proves nothing. It's odd that on the very day that we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the church has us read a story that only reveals an empty tomb. There were apparently no eyewitnesses to the actual resurrection, so the church can't provide us with their accounts. And while there are subsequent stories of the risen Christ's appearance that offer evidence of the resurrection, the church chooses to wait for another day for us to read those stories. All we read about today is the discovery of an empty tomb. And an empty tomb proves nothing. It apparently didn't mean anything to Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James, when they first discovered it. Luke tells us that upon entering the tomb, the women puzzled over its emptiness. You think? These three women had accompanied Jesus on his journey from Galilee, were with him for his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and watched with horror when one thing after another started to go wrong. And this week, we, along with them, watched all of their hopes and dreams unravel as we remembered the story of Jesus' suffering and death, of Judas's betrayal of him at the Last Supper, his arrest at the Garden of Gethsemane, of Peter's denial of him 3 times, his sham trial before the Sanhedrin and Pontius Pilate, his scourging at the pillar, his carrying the cross, his crucifixion at Golgotha, his death in abandonment, and his burial in a borrowed tomb. After all these events, returning to the tomb that first day of the week and finding it empty must have been the final blow to these 3 women. Just how many more things could go wrong? Puzzling over the empty tomb is probably putting it mildly. They had to have been devastated. But then 2 men appear, probably angels, and they ask, "Why do you seek the living one among the dead? He is not here, but has been raised." And then they added, "Remember what he said to you while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and rise on the 3rd day." And then they remembered his words. And once they remembered, everything changed. You see, without remembering the words of Jesus Christ, the empty tomb was just one more thing gone wrong. But in remembering those words, in remembering all that he had done for them, in remembering how he had turned one troubled moment after another into a joyful victory, the empty tomb became a sign of hope. The empty tomb became a chance to believe that God had just done the impossible in Jesus Christ. And so we gather today to remember not only the words that Jesus spoke to us, but to remember all of the things God had done for us in Jesus Christ. When Peter addresses the crowds in the Acts of the Apostles, he tries to do just that. He teaches them about God's love for them in what God has accomplished through Jesus Christ. How through Jesus the Christ, God healed those oppressed by sin and brokenness in the world, and called us to discover love, not in the possessions we own or in the status we hold, but in performing our own acts of mercy, justice, and peace. How the love of God revealed in Jesus Christ stretches beyond the care and concern he showed for us here on earth, but breaks through even the boundaries of death, uniting us with God in love and life forever. For he loved his own in the world, and he loved them to the end. These are the things we remember this Easter day, and indeed on every day of our lives. For when we remember what God has done for us in Jesus Christ, everything changes. When the turmoil of our lives catches up with us, when we struggle to buy this or to pay for that, when we become consumed by the demands of material possessions, and we decide that the solution to our problems is more money, more time, more stuff, we need to remember, why do you seek the living one among the dead? He is not here, but has been raised. Remember what he told you while he was still in Galilee. When sickness and death strike at the heart of our lives, when violence continues every day and every night in our city streets, when the white majority demonizes the Black and Latino and Muslim minorities, blaming them for all that is wrong in the world, discouraging us and leading us to despair, and we look for consolation and solace in all the wrong places, with all the wrong people, with all the wrong things, we need to remember, why do you seek the living one among the dead? He is not here. He has been raised. Remember what he said to you while he was still in Galilee. When we are so torn apart in our personal lives that all we can do is cry out to God like the psalmist and say, "Why have you forsaken me? Remember, O Lord, your promises." We need to hear the angels say to us, "No, you remember. Why do you seek the living one among the dead? He is not here, but he has been raised. Remember what he told you while he was still in Galilee." So often, when we face the problems in life, we end up searching for the solutions in all the dead places. We expect God to remember his promises, when in fact God has already fulfilled his end of the bargain, and it's only up to us to remember. Because once we remember that God has already accomplished our salvation, that Jesus Christ is indeed risen from the dead, everything changes. When we remember that our lives have value not because of what we own or what we have accomplished, but because of the love that God and others have for us, then we are free to navigate our lives without fear of failure. When we come up against those brick walls in life, those times when we wonder if it can possibly get any worse, and we remember what God has done for us in Jesus Christ, then we can consider the chance that maybe we have been looking in all the wrong places. That maybe there are possibilities out there that we haven't even considered yet. Remembering what God has done for us in Jesus Christ gives us reason to hope. It empowers us to look beyond the challenges and disappointments of life and to believe that God can indeed do the impossible. That the one more thing that just went wrong might actually be a sign that God is up to something completely new. It is living with hope that ultimately brings joy to our lives. A joy that is not rooted in some simplistic notion that God will do whatever we want, but a joy that can withstand the disappointments of life because it understands the deeper reality of God's love for us, and that our lives matter because of that love. A joy that understands that with the resurrection of Jesus Christ, nothing is impossible for God. An empty tomb proves nothing. But the point of the empty tomb is not to prove that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. Nothing could really prove that. The point of the empty tomb is to give us reason to hope, to realize that in the love that God has for us through Jesus Christ, there is always a deeper reality at work. Only when we remember the words of Jesus can we navigate the world in a way that looks at the struggles in our lives as opportunities for God to work the impossible. Only then can we look at an empty tomb and conclude not that one more thing has just gone wrong, but that Jesus Christ is indeed risen from the dead. Happy Easter.